Hello, welcome to Club Cook again. We're going to make a vegetable soup today, a nice thick, protein-rich, creamy soup. So there can be no lumps for children to worry about. And we're going to get as much vegetables in as we can. Now you can use any vegetables you like really for soup. There are three main groups. So there's the onions. We will start with an onion type thing. But you don't have to use onions, you could use a leek or some spring onions, any of those. So onions, and then the main vegetables for the flavour. So today I'm going to use carrots, a sweet potato and some butternut squash. You could use any vegetables there, you could use tinned vegetables actually. Carrots, mixed veg, beans, anything like that. And then there's the stock that we'll add to that, and we're also going to add some beans, but they will be hidden by blending them, we won't see them. So I'm going to start with chopping the onions, 2 onions. Again, chop them in half first, peel that, keeping the root on the end so that we don't get too teary. This doesn't have to be chopped very finely because this is all going to be cooked together and then blended, so don't need to worry about too much. Just a little bit of oil in the pan, a spoonful is enough. Pop the onions in there. Now we need the carrots. There's no need to peel the carrots, we're just going to scrub them. So I'll just take those to the sink and scrub them. So chop the washed carrots, just take the ends off. If you cut them in half lengthways, then they're flat on the top. And they don't wobble around then. Right, so the carrots go in to the pot, join the onions, bit of a stir. Next we've got a sweet potato, which does need a bit of a peel. Sweet potato gives a lovely creaminess, and it's also very good for you. They're not as starchy as white potatoes. And they are, in fact, classed as your one of your 5 a day, unlike potatoes, which are not, so you can all feel good about having those in the soup. It goes in as well. It's going to be a lovely colour, this one. If you put more green things in, it wouldn't be quite the same colour, but it's still nice. Now, butternut squash, just half one there. They can be quite monsters, but they're pretty cheap, and in the autumn they're really seasonal and lovely to use, lovely and creamy. That needs a peel as well. I'm using the end here without the seeds in. The bottom, that bit which I've used before, would have some seeds in the middle, so you just scrape those out. And then we'll chop that up. Just into cubes or rough cubes. It's all going to get cooked, so it doesn't really matter what shape it is. But the smaller you cook things, the quicker they cook. So that's, if you're in a hurry and you can chop it a bit smaller, that would save you a bit of time in the cooking. So that goes in the pot too. So we could just do it, keep it with just the vegetable flavours. I always think something that goes really well with butternut squash and winter soups is smoked paprika, which is not spicy at all. It adds a lovely colour and a lovely, just a little warmth flavour My kids are addicted to this. We have it in everything. So give it a try. And just sprinkle that in, and that can cook with the vegetables. Now we're going to add some liquid, some stock. You can use 2 stock cubes, or if you have some powder, really useful stuff, because you can have just a little half teaspoon or a lot. You don't have to have a whole cube. Sometimes you only want less than a cube. So a couple of teaspoons in there, and fill that up with boiling water. Okay, so just filling that up to about half a litre. A little stir. And pop that in. The other thing we're going to add, you don't have to, but a can of beans, like cannellini, are very nice because they're very soft and they blend. I'll just drain those, pop those in. And we're just going to leave that to cook on a gentle heat for about 20 minutes. And it's really just until the vegetables are soft. And then we're going to blend it so it's nice and creamy. So now we're going to make some bread to go with that. It's a really easy bread. It's called a soda bread, which is a sort of cheat way to make bread, but really nice with soup because you can dip it in, and it's a really filling meal then. And you'll be very proud to make yourself a loaf of bread, I think. So for the bread, we're going to use plain flour, not bread flour, not extra strong flour, and this is just white plain flour. We need 400 grams for that. You can weigh it out, or you can use a cup. When things say cups, actually, they're about a mug or a big teacup. So I'm just going to use one of these. So 1, 2, not coming out, 3. We're going to add to that some salt. Bread always does need some salt. A teaspoon and a half of salt is quite good. So that's 1 and a half. Now, the thing, normal bread has yeast to rise it, and usually different kind of flour. But we're going to use this. It's bicarbonate of soda. It's not baking powder, but it will be with baking powder in the shop. But bicarbonate of soda is a bit different to baking powder. So we just need 1 teaspoon of that. Now, just give that a little mix. You can use your hands to mix, as long as they're clean. There we are. And the liquid is going to be, traditionally it's buttermilk. Well, who has buttermilk? I don't ever even see it in the shops. So buttermilk is really just sort of slightly soured milk. So we're going to use 1/4 of a litre, that's 250 mils of milk. You can use any kind of milk, regular milk, skim milk, whole milk, semi-skimmed. I'm using a lactose-free milk because I'm lactose intolerant. But you could use soy milk or oat milk. Anything that says milk is fine. 1/4 of a litre, and that needs something now to make it more like buttermilk, which is something sour. So I'm using lemon juice. Lemon juice in a bottle is nice and cheap, and it keeps in the fridge for a long time, so you don't need to have a lemon to squeeze. You could also use cider vinegar or white wine vinegar or even white vinegar, but you don't want the dark malty vinegar or red wine vinegar or anything like that. So a tablespoon in there, which is, this is not a tablespoon, so I'm going to use 2 of these. And there. And give that a stir. So all the dry stuff basically is in there, and the wet stuff is here. We just tip that in. So mixing it with a knife. You can use your hands for this, and I will in a minute, but I just find it a bit easier to start with a knife. Now, it needs to come together into a sort of lumpy, sticky lump, I suppose. So when it gets to about that, you need to just get a bit more flour, sprinkle that on there, and a bit on your hands. Just try and squeeze that out. If you can just sort of make it into a ball in the bowl and wipe it round, it gets most of it out. There we are. And pop that there. A bit more flour on your hands. We just need to, we're not kneading this like bread dough, like Paul Hollywood or anyone. We're just patting it into a round, slightly flattened round like that. Then we're going to put that on a baking sheet. Going to sprinkle a bit of flour on the baking sheet. And pop your dough on there. Now this bit is very important. You need to make a cross on there. A really nice deep cross, but without going all the way through. Now what that does is when the bread starts to cook inside, it expands so that it gets, you know, nice and risen, and it pushes up and it can open up then. If you didn't put the slits in, it would keep it all too tight, and it would just be very solid. So this opens up. Looks a bit strange, but that will sort of look better once it's cooked. And then we pop that into the oven. Now the nice thing about this bread is that it's cooked at a fairly normal temperature, so that's 180 degrees on electric. If you had a fan electric oven, that would be 160, or if you had gas, it's gas mark 4. And that's the temperature that you would cook most cakes, stews, baked potatoes, anything else. So if you can cook something in the oven at the same time, this can go on one shelf if you had something else underneath. You're not turning your oven on just for a loaf of bread. Okay. So now the soup's cooked, it's all nice and soft and looks rather mushy. We're going to take that off the heat and blend it nice and smooth. Now it depends what vegetables you've got in there, of how thick this will be. This has come very thick now. It's only half blended, but you can see it's very thick for soup. So we're going to add some more stock to it, just make up some more stock. About half of that to start with. Now that's a lovely thick creamy soup. You can make it thinner than that if you wanted. I need to taste it just for seasoning, so I think that's fine. It doesn't need any more salt because in the stock powder, stock cubes or stock powder, there's quite a lot of salt. So don't add any salt until the end when you might need more, but lovely. So I'll put some of that in a bowl just to show you. And we'll get our bread out of the oven. And there we are. Now, you could break that into hunks and have it with soup, or you can slice it with butter, have a bit of cheese on it. But with the beans in there and all those vegetables, that's a really nice, healthy meal that really has only taken less than an hour to cook. So enjoy.